You know that moment, when you realize your entire childhood wasn't just difficult, it was designed that way? When you understand that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones tearing you down? That's where my story begins. But it doesn't end there. Not even close. My name is Sarah, and for 32 years, I believed I was the problem. I believed I deserved less. I believed my sister Emma was just naturally better, more deserving, more worthy of love. But on one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, at a family dinner that was supposed to be about celebrating my daughter's 8th birthday, I watched my mother do something so cruel, so calculated, that it shattered every illusion I'd been living under. She told my children to wait, to watch, to sit there with empty plates and hollow stomachs while my sister's kids ate first. And when those plates came back with nothing but crumbs and scraps, my mother smiled and said, "Now you can share what's left." That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped being the obedient daughter who swallowed her pain and started being the mother who would burn the whole world down before letting anyone hurt her children the way I'd been hurt. This is the story of how I went from the forgotten daughter to the woman who exposed decades of favoritism, manipulation, and emotional abuse. This is the story of how I took back my power, and this is the story of how my revenge didn't just change my life. It changed everything. Let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up, I thought every family had a favorite child. I thought it was normal for one kid to get the best of everything, while the other got whatever was left over. I thought that's just how families worked. Emma was born 3 years before me, and from the moment I arrived, the hierarchy was crystal clear. She was the golden child. I was, well, I was the backup plan, the spare, the one they had just in case something happened to the important one. My mother never said it out loud, not exactly, but actions speak louder than words, don't they? When Emma wanted ballet lessons, she got enrolled in the most expensive academy in town. When I asked for the same thing 2 years later, I was told we couldn't afford it. When Emma needed a new winter coat, we went to the department store, and she picked out whatever she wanted. When I needed one, we went to the thrift store, and I was told to be grateful for what I got. Birthdays were the worst. Emma's birthdays were events. Planning would start weeks in advance. The house would be decorated like a magazine spread. 20, 30 kids would show up with expensive gifts. There'd be a professional cake, entertainment, goodie bags that cost more than my weekly allowance. My birthdays? We're keeping it small this year, Sarah. You understand, right? You're not as social as Emma anyway. Small meant a boxed cake from the grocery store, maybe 3 friends if I was lucky, and gifts that were always practical. Never fun. Never something I actually wanted. A new backpack for school. Socks. A dictionary once. Because education is important. I remember my 10th birthday. I'd asked for a bike. All my friends had bikes, and I wanted to ride with them after school. Emma had gotten a brand new mountain bike 2 years earlier, bright purple with all the accessories. I wasn't asking for anything fancy, just a bike, any bike. My birthday came, and my parents handed me a card. Inside was a note that said, "Your gift is that we're paying for Emma's orthodontist appointment. Sharing is caring." They actually wrote that. They actually thought that was an acceptable birthday present for a 10-year-old child. I cried myself to sleep that night, and my mother came into my room, not to comfort me, but to tell me I was being selfish and ungrateful. "Emma needs those braces," she said. "What kind of sister are you to begrudge her that?" That's when I learned that my feelings didn't matter, that my needs would always come second, that I was supposed to sacrifice silently and smile while doing it. School was another battlefield. Emma was naturally smart, sure, but she was also supported in every possible way. Tutors when she struggled, extra materials, a quiet study space, encouragement, celebration for every achievement, no matter how small. I was smart too. Actually, I was smarter. My teachers said so in every parent-teacher conference, but my parents never seemed to hear that part. When I brought home straight A's, it was, well, that's what we expect. When Emma brought home B's and C's, it was, "We're so proud of your efforts, sweetie." I worked twice as hard for half the recognition, and somehow, I still believed it was my fault. That if I just tried harder, did better, was more perfect, maybe they'd love me the way they loved her. By the time I was in high school, I'd built an entire identity around being the responsible one, the one who didn't need attention or praise, the one who took care of herself. I got a part-time job at 15 to buy my own clothes and school supplies. I applied to colleges on my own, filled out scholarship applications alone in the library after school, made every decision about my future without any input or support from my parents. Emma? She had a college advisor they paid $3,000 to help her with applications. She didn't work a single day through high school because her studies were too important. She got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass. But I kept going. I kept pushing. I got into a good university with a full academic scholarship. I worked multiple jobs to pay for everything else. I graduated with honors. I got a good job in marketing. I met a wonderful man named David, and we built a life together. I thought once I was successful, once I'd proven myself, things would change. They'd see me differently. They'd be proud. I was wrong. David and I got married in a small ceremony. We couldn't afford anything big, and honestly, I didn't want my parents involved in the planning anyway. Every time my mother had an opinion about our relationship, it was criticism disguised as concern. "Are you sure about David? He's not exactly ambitious, is he? That dress is lovely for your body type, Sarah. Very. Forgiving. A backyard wedding. Well, I suppose that's practical. Different strokes for different folks." Emma got married 2 years after me. The wedding cost $40,000. My parents paid for everything. It was featured in a local wedding magazine. 200 guests. Designer dress. Destination bachelorette party in Mexico. String quartet. Prime rib dinner. Open bar. I was invited, of course. As a guest. Not even a bridesmaid. Emma had chosen her 5 closest friends for that honor. I sat in the 3rd row, wearing a dress I'd bought on sale, watching my parents beam with pride as they walked their precious golden child down the aisle. At the reception, my father gave a speech about what an incredible daughter Emma was, how proud they were, how she'd always been exceptional, how blessed they were to watch her become this amazing woman. He didn't mention me once, not even a, "We're blessed with 2 wonderful daughters." Nothing. I was invisible. David held my hand under the table and whispered, "We can leave whenever you want." But I stayed. I smiled. I congratulated her. I played my role as the supportive younger sister who was just so happy for everyone. Inside, I was dying. When David and I announced we were expecting our first child, my mother's response was, "Oh, that's soon. Are you sure you're ready?" Emma wasn't even engaged yet, and my mother was already worried that I was somehow taking attention away from her by having a baby first. Our daughter Lily was born on a Tuesday. We called my parents from the hospital. They said they'd come by later in the week. They were busy. Emma had a work event they'd promised to attend. They showed up 4 days later, stayed for 20 minutes, and left. When Emma announced her pregnancy 2 years later, my parents cried with joy. They immediately started planning the nursery in their house for when she'd visit. They bought every baby item imaginable. They threw her a baby shower that looked like it belonged on Pinterest. $300 stroller, designer onesies, custom wooden name sign. My baby shower? I threw it myself with a few friends. My mother showed up late and left early. Her gift was a pack of diapers from the bulk store. But I told myself, it was fine. I didn't need them. I had David. I had Lily. We were building our own family, our own life, our own happiness that didn't depend on their validation. Then I had my son, Marcus. Then Emma had twins. And that's when the pattern shifted from painful to unbearable. Because now it wasn't just about me anymore. Now they were doing to my children exactly what they'd done to me. And I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't rationalize it. I couldn't pretend it was okay. My kids started to notice. Lily was 6 when she first asked me why Grandma and Grandpa bought Emma's kids so many presents, but she only got one small thing. What do you say to that? How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her grandparents simply love her cousins more? I made excuses. Aunt Emma's kids are younger, sweetie. They need more things. Grandma and Grandpa are on a budget. It's not about the presents, honey. It's about spending time together. But the excuses felt hollow because they were lies, and kids can sense lies. Marcus was 4 when he asked why we always had to share his toys with his cousins, but they never shared theirs with him. Why we always had to visit them but they rarely came to our house. Why at family dinners, his cousins got to sit at the big table while he was relegated to the kids' table even though he was the same age as one of the twins. I started to dread family gatherings. Every holiday, every birthday, every casual Sunday dinner. Each one was a fresh reminder that in my family's eyes, my children were secondary, lesser. Not quite as important as Emma's perfect offspring. David wanted us to stop going. This is toxic, Sarah. You see that, right? This isn't normal. This isn't how families treat each other. But I wasn't ready. I kept hoping, kept thinking if I just showed up enough, proved our worth enough, somehow things would change. Somehow they'd wake up and realize what they were doing. I was still trapped in that childhood mindset, still seeking approval from people who would never give it. Still believing that if I just tried hard enough, I could earn the love that should have been unconditional from the start. That all ended on my daughter's 8th birthday. We'd been planning Lily's 8th birthday party for weeks. She'd asked for a family dinner at our house. Nothing fancy, just pizza, cake, and having everyone together. She specifically wanted her grandparents and her cousins there because despite everything, she loved them. Kids have this incredible capacity for love, even when it's not returned equally. I spent days preparing. I cleaned the house top to bottom. I ordered Lily's favorite pizza. I baked a homemade cake shaped like a unicorn because she was obsessed with unicorns that year. I decorated the dining room with streamers and balloons. I wrapped her presents beautifully. My parents arrived late, which wasn't surprising. Emma and her husband Tom came with their twins, Jackson and Sophia, who were 7, and their youngest, Claire, who was 3. The twins immediately ran to the pile of toys in the living room. Lily tried to play with them, but they ignored her. They often did. Marcus, who was 6 at the time, followed them around like a puppy, hoping they'd include him. They didn't. I ignored the tension and brought everyone to the table. The pizza was ready. The salad was tossed. Everything looked perfect. Lily sat at the head of the table with her birthday crown on, beaming with excitement. That's when my mother made the announcement that broke me. She stood up, holding a stack of plates, and started distributing them. But she didn't start with the birthday girl. She didn't start with my kids at all. She walked directly to Jackson and Sophia and placed plates in front of them. Emma's kids eat first, she announced, as casually as if she was commenting on the weather. They're growing and they need their nutrition. Lily and Marcus can wait for the second round. I froze. David froze. Even Emma looked uncomfortable, though she didn't say anything to stop it. Mom, I said slowly, it's Lily's birthday. There's plenty of pizza for everyone. They can all eat at the same time. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. They'll get their turn. Emma's children have had a long day. They need to eat now. I looked at Lily. Her smile had vanished. Her eyes were filling with tears. Marcus looked confused, his little hand still reaching toward the pizza that was now being served to his cousins. This is ridiculous, David said, standing up. It's our daughter's birthday. In our house. You're not going to— Stay out of this, David, my father interrupted. This is how we're doing it. I watched, frozen in shock and rage, as my mother served generous slices to Jackson and Sophia. Then she put slices on plates for Emma, Tom, and my father. Then she made herself a plate. The pizza boxes that had been full minutes ago were now mostly empty. Emma's kids ate slowly, deliberately, while my children sat with empty plates, watching. When Jackson and Sophia finally finished, there were exactly 2 slices left. 1 pepperoni, 1 cheese. Both half-eaten by that point because my mother had placed them on the communal platter where Emma's kids had picked at them. My mother took those 2 remaining slices, broke them into smaller pieces, and placed them on Lily and Marcus's plates. There you go, she said cheerfully. Sharing is caring. Lily burst into tears. Not quiet tears, gut-wrenching sobs. She pushed her chair back and ran to her room. Marcus just stared at his plate, at the small, torn pieces of pizza that were supposed to be his dinner at his sister's birthday party. The room fell silent except for Lily's crying echoing from upstairs. I looked at my mother. What did you just do? She had the audacity to look confused. What? They got food. Stop spoiling them, Sarah. Kids need to learn that they can't always have everything they want. It's her birthday. I shouted. I never shouted. I was always the calm one, the peacekeeper. You came to my house on my daughter's birthday, and you fed everyone else first and gave my children scraps. You're being overdramatic, my father said. They're fine. They're not going to starve. Emma finally spoke up, but not to defend me. Mom's right, Sarah. You do spoil them. A little humility is good for kids. That was it. That was the moment. Something inside me that had been cracking for 32 years finally shattered completely. I looked at these people, my family, the people who were supposed to love me, love my children, and I realized they never would. This wasn't going to change. This wasn't a phase or a misunderstanding. This was who they were. This was what they believed. That Emma and her children mattered more. That my children deserved less. That I deserved less. David was already moving, ordering more pizza from his phone, going upstairs to comfort Lily. I could hear him telling her she was loved, she was special, this was wrong and not her fault. I stood up, my hands shaking. Get out. My mother laughed, actually laughed. Oh, Sarah, don't be silly. Get out of my house. My father stood up. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret, I said, my voice cold and steady now, is the 32 years I wasted trying to make you love me. Get out. All of you. Now. Emma grabbed her purse. You're insane. You're actually insane. Get out, I repeated. They left. My mother was still muttering about how ungrateful I was. My father slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall shook. Emma didn't even look back. When they were gone, I sat on the floor of my kitchen and cried. Not sad tears, angry tears. Tears of rage and grief and 32 years of pain finally being acknowledged. David came downstairs and sat beside me. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have made them leave the second she did that. It's not your fault, I said. It's theirs. And I'm done. I'm completely done. Later that night, after we'd had a second birthday celebration with just the four of us, after the kids were asleep, David and I sat on the couch in silence. What do you want to do? He finally asked. I thought about that question. What did I want? I wanted them to hurt the way they'd hurt me. I wanted them to understand what they'd done. I wanted justice for that little girl who never got a bike, for the teenager who had to work 3 jobs, for the young woman whose wedding didn't matter, and most of all, for my children who deserved so much better than the crumbs they'd been offered. I want revenge, I said quietly. Not the loud kind, not the obvious kind, the kind that dismantles everything, the kind that exposes the truth, the kind that makes them face exactly who they are. David looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Tell me what you need. And so I began to plan. Revenge, I learned, is most effective when it's patient, when it's thorough, when it's backed by undeniable evidence. You can't just tell people your family treated you badly and expect them to believe you, especially when your family has spent decades crafting a perfect image. My parents were pillars of the community. Church every Sunday, volunteer work, donations to local charities. My father had been a respected accountant before retirement. My mother was known for her charity bake sales and her dedication to family. Emma played the part of the perfect daughter beautifully, always posting about family values and gratitude on social media. From the outside, we looked like the ideal family. And that was the problem. No one would believe me if I just told them what happened. I needed proof. I needed documentation. I needed to build a case so airtight that denial would be impossible. I started with the past. I went through every photo album in my possession, every childhood photo, every family gathering documented on camera. The pattern was immediately obvious once you knew to look for it. In birthday photos, Emma always had a lavish setup. Mine were minimal if they were photographed at all. In family portraits, Emma was always positioned front and center. I was off to the side. In candid shots, Emma was being hugged, kissed, celebrated. I was there, present but not centered, visible but not seen. I scanned hundreds of photos. I organized them chronologically. The evidence was damning. Year after year after year of visual proof that one child was cherished and the other was tolerated. Then I went through school records I'd saved, My report cards versus Emma's. Mine. Straight A's with minimal commentary from my parents. Hers. Mixed grades with notes like, so proud, and great effort, written in my mother's handwriting. I found scholarship letters I'd received, college acceptance letters, academic awards. None of them had ever been displayed in my parents' house. But Emma's mediocre achievements covered their refrigerator and walls. I pulled bank records from when I was in college. I'd kept meticulous financial records because I'd had to. Every scholarship check, every work paycheck, every expense I'd paid for myself. Then I requested my parents' financial records from that same period. They'd given me permission years ago to be on some of their accounts for emergency purposes, and that access was still active. What I found was staggering. During my 4 years of college, while I'd worked multiple jobs and survived on ramen, my parents had spent over $150,000 on Emma. Tuition at her expensive private school, apartment rent, a new car, spring break trips, a study abroad semester in France, shopping allowances, credit card bills they paid off, emergency funds that were apparently only for emergencies if your name was Emma. I made spreadsheets. I documented every dollar. The disparity was obscene. Then I started documenting the present. I began keeping a journal of every family interaction. Dates, times, exact quotes when I could remember them. I started recording conversations on my phone. Just audio, and only during family gatherings where I was part of the conversation, staying within legal boundaries. I recorded my mother saying things like, "Well, Sarah's kids are fine, but Emma's children are exceptional." I recorded my father explaining to someone at a family barbecue that Emma was his success story, while I was just doing okay, I suppose. I recorded Emma telling her friends at Christmas that she was essentially an only child, because Sarah was never really part of the family. That last one hurt the most, but it also crystallized exactly what I was dealing with. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being sensitive. This was real. This was documented. This was provable. I took photos of gift disparities. Christmas morning, Emma's kids opened pile after pile of expensive presents from my parents. Mine opened one small gift each. I documented birthday parties. Family vacations Emma was invited on that we weren't. Family group chats I wasn't included in. I reached out to my old therapist, someone I'd seen briefly in my 20s, when I was struggling with what I thought was just generalized anxiety and low self-esteem. With my new understanding, I asked her if she still had her notes from our sessions. She did, and with my permission, she provided me with a professional summary that used terms like scapegoat child dynamics, parentification, emotional neglect, and favoritism-based family trauma. Having a licensed therapist validate my experience with clinical language was powerful. This wasn't just my feelings. This was a recognized pattern of psychological harm. I joined online support groups for scapegoat children and adult children of narcissistic families. I wasn't sure if my parents were clinically narcissistic, but the patterns people described were identical to my experience. I learned terminology. I learned about golden child, scapegoat dynamics. I learned about triangulation, gaslighting, and flying monkeys. Everything I'd experienced suddenly had names, and those names were connected to documented psychological abuse patterns. I collected stories from these groups, not to use them as my own, but to understand the broader context, to know I wasn't alone, to see how others had addressed similar situations. Some had gone no contact. Some had confronted their families and been rejected. Some had found ways to heal. Some were still suffering. I wanted to be in the category of people who had found a way to heal. But first, I needed to make sure this never happened to my children again. Over 3 months, I built a comprehensive file: photos, financial records, recordings, therapist notes, journal entries, a timeline that spanned 3 decades. It was organized, thorough, and utterly damning. David watched this process with a mixture of concern and support. "What are you going to do with all of this?" he asked one night as I worked on organizing the files on my computer. "I'm going to make sure they can't lie anymore," I said. "I'm going to expose the truth to everyone who matters. And I'm going to make sure that when people look at our family, they see it for what it really is." "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked gently. "Once you do this, There's no going back. Your relationship with them is already fractured. This might destroy it completely. I looked at him. David, there is no relationship to destroy. There never was. They don't love me. They never have. And I refuse to keep pretending, to keep showing up, to keep exposing our children to their toxicity, because I'm afraid of losing something I never actually had. He nodded slowly. Then I'm with you. Whatever you need. What I needed was a plan. Not just for exposing them to random people, but for exposing them to the people whose opinions they actually cared about. My parents valued reputation above almost everything. Their standing in the community, their image at church, their relationship with extended family, Emma's carefully curated social media presence. That's where I would strike. I decided to start with the extended family, my parents' siblings, my grandparents who were still alive, my cousins. These were people who had witnessed my childhood but through the filtered lens my parents had provided. They'd always been told Emma was special and I was difficult. They'd been given the narrative that I was ungrateful, that I had pulled away from the family, that I was the problem. I organized a family meeting. I told everyone it was important. I framed it as wanting to address some family issues before they got worse. My mother was thrilled when she heard about it. She thought I was finally coming back into the fold, that I was going to apologize for my outburst at Lily's birthday party. She had no idea what was coming. We held it at my Aunt Linda's house, my mother's sister. Neutral territory. Everyone came. My parents, Emma and Tom, various aunts, uncles, and cousins. About 20 people total. David stayed home with the kids, but we had a plan for him to be on video call if needed. I brought my laptop and a projector I'd rented. I set up in the living room while everyone mingled, drank coffee, and chatted. My mother kept giving me approving looks, clearly thinking I was about to announce some kind of reconciliation. When everyone was settled, I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Thank you all for coming, I began. I asked you here today because there's something important I need to share. Something I should have addressed a long time ago. But first, I want to apologize to some of you. Growing up, I was often difficult at family gatherings, withdrawn, emotional. I seemed to create problems where there weren't any, and I want you to understand why. My mother was nodding, probably thinking I was about to take full blame. Emma was on her phone, barely paying attention. What I'm about to show you is documentation of a pattern that has existed in our family for over 30 years, I continued. A pattern of favoritism, neglect, and emotional abuse that has affected not just me, but now is affecting my children. I'm sharing this because I believe in honesty, and because I believe that families should operate on truth, not comfortable lies. Now I had everyone's attention. My mother's smile had frozen. Emma had looked up from her phone. I turned on the projector. The first slide was a collage of birthday photos. Side by side, Emma's elaborate celebrations next to my minimal ones. Same ages, same family, completely different treatment. The room went quiet. This is Emma's 6th birthday, I said, pointing. Professionally catered party, 30 guests, petting zoo, and this is my 6th birthday. Boxed cake, 3 friends. Living room. Click. Emma's 10th birthday. Shopping trip to buy her anything she wanted. My 10th birthday. A note saying they'd paid for Emma's orthodontist, and that was my gift. I moved through the slides methodically. I showed the financial records, with sensitive information redacted but the spending patterns clear as day. Over $150,000 spent on Emma during college. Documented $0 spent on me. My Aunt Linda gasped. My Uncle Richard was shaking his head. My grandmother looked horrified. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, I said. I graduated with honors. I never asked them for money because I'd learned by then that I wasn't worth investing in. At least, that's what I believed. I showed the therapy notes, with my therapist's permission. I read portions aloud. The clinical descriptions of scapegoat child syndrome, the documented emotional neglect, the long-term psychological impact. My mother tried to interrupt. This is completely... I'm not finished, I said firmly. You'll have a chance to respond. I played some of the audio recordings. My mother calling Emma's children exceptional while describing mine as just fine. My father telling someone I was basically an afterthought compared to Emma. Emma saying she was essentially an only child. The room was silent except for the playback. Some of my relatives looked shocked. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked like they were finally seeing something they'd always sensed but never acknowledged. Then I showed the final piece, the video I'd secretly taken at Lily's birthday party. I'd set up my phone on the kitchen counter, recording, because some part of me knew I might need evidence of how bad things had gotten. The footage showed everything: my mother deliberately serving Emma's kids first, my children waiting with empty plates, the scraps they were finally given, Lily running from the room in tears. This was my daughter's 8th birthday, I said, my voice breaking slightly. In my home. And my mother made my children wait and watch while their cousins ate. Then she gave them literal crumbs and told them sharing is caring. The video ended. I turned off the projector. I turned to face my family. I'm not asking you to choose sides, I said. I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm simply asking you to see it, to acknowledge it, to understand that this pattern has existed for my entire life and is now being inflicted on my children. And I'm here to say that it stops now. My kids will never be treated this way again. We will not be attending family functions where this behavior continues. We will not be pretending anymore that this is normal or acceptable. The room erupted. My mother stood up, her face red with anger and embarrassment. This is a complete distortion. You're taking everything out of context. You've always been oversensitive, Sarah. You've always twisted things. I showed them video footage, Mom, of you making an 8-year-old cry on her birthday. There's no context that makes that okay. My Aunt Linda spoke up. Margaret, I had no idea it was this extreme. My grandmother was crying. How could you do this to your own child? Emma jumped to our mother's defense, as she always did. Sarah has always been dramatic. She's manipulating all of you with selective evidence. Our childhood was fine. She's just jealous that I've been more successful. More successful? I laughed, and it came out bitter. Emma, you've been handed everything your entire life. You've never had to work for anything. You've never had to prove yourself. You've been given opportunity after opportunity, paid for entirely by our parents, while I scraped by on my own. That's not success. That's privilege you've been too self-absorbed to recognize. The room divided quickly. Some family members rallied around my mother and Emma, insisting I was exaggerating or misremembering. But others, especially my younger cousins and Aunt Linda, looked at me with new understanding. Aunt Linda came over to me after the initial chaos died down. I wish you'd told me, she said quietly. I saw glimpses of it over the years, but your mother always had explanations. She always made it sound like you were just difficult or you'd chosen to be distant. That's what scapegoats do, I said. We internalize the blame. We believe we deserve the treatment. It takes a long time to see it for what it is. The gathering broke up badly. My parents left in a fury. Emma was ranting about how I'd humiliated them, but several family members stayed behind. They asked questions. They shared their own observations now that they had permission to see the pattern. They apologized for not noticing sooner. My Uncle Richard pulled me aside before I left. Your dad is my brother-in-law, and I love him, but what you showed today, that's not okay. I have 3 kids. I can't imagine treating one of them the way you've been treated. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm really sorry. That validation meant more than I could express. But I knew this was just the beginning. My parents would regroup. They'd craft their counter-narrative. They'd tell everyone I was lying or crazy or vindictive. I needed to make sure the truth reached beyond just our family circle. I needed to go public. Emma lived her life on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Her entire identity was wrapped up in her online persona. The perfect mother, the grateful daughter, the family-focused woman who posted endlessly about the importance of family values and gratitude. Her posts were always the same. Carefully curated photos of her children, heartfelt captions about how blessed she was, pictures with our mother, always with captions like, "Best mom ever," or "So grateful for this woman who taught me everything about love and family." She had thousands of followers. She'd become a minor local influencer, partnering with brands for sponsored posts. Her whole livelihood had started to revolve around this image of perfect family life. That image was built on a lie, and I was going to expose it. I created a blog. I called it The Scapegoat Speaks. I designed it to look professional, clean, and credible. Then I wrote my story. Not with anger, but with facts. I laid out the timeline. I included photos, with faces blurred for privacy but the context clear. I shared portions of the financial records. I embedded the audio recordings. I wrote about the psychological impact, citing actual research on family scapegoating and golden child dynamics. I ended with the birthday video. I titled that post, "When They Show You Who They Are, Believe Them." I published the blog and then I did something I'd never done before. I tagged my entire family on social media. I shared the link on my personal pages, which didn't have many followers, but I didn't need many. I knew how the internet worked. I knew how things spread. The post went live on a Saturday morning. Within 2 hours, I had 50 comments. By that evening, the blog had been shared hundreds of times. People were outraged. The video of Lily's birthday party especially struck a nerve. Parents were horrified. People who'd experienced similar childhoods shared their own stories in the comments. Emma's pristine social media presence began to crumble. People started commenting on her posts. "Is this the same family where you let your kids eat while your niece and nephew starved on the niece's birthday? So much for family values. This you? With